This is CNN Breaking News.
You are live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Ana Cabrera in New York. We begin with major breaking news. More than 20 people are dead, dozens injured after a gunman opened fire inside a small Texas church. Here is the latest information. This all took place around 11:30 this morning local time when a witness reported hearing about 20 shots fired in quick succession. It was in the middle of Sunday service at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. That's east of San Antonio, and we are told the gunman died after a brief chase. And we don't know if he was killed by police or if he took his own life. A lot of unanswered questions tonight. We don't know if he was a member of the community. We don't know why he might have done this. What we do know for sure is a small Texas town has witnessed an unspeakable tragedy that has left countless families without their loved ones tonight. A short time ago, President Trump offered his support from abroad, tweeting, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas." The FBI and law enforcement are on the scene. I am monitoring the situation from Japan. We do expect Texas officials to hold a press conference. We will bring that to you as soon as it happens. The president also expected to make some remarks sometime this evening. Right now, I want to bring in our law enforcement voices to help us walk through exactly what investigators may be doing at this moment. FBI agents in Sutherland Springs are on scene. We know ATF is on its way. Joining us to talk about this, I want to get to James Galliano. He's a CNN law enforcement analyst and retired FBI supervisory special agent, and also with us, CNN law enforcement analyst Cedric Alexander. So, James, I'll start with you. What scenario would bring the FBI and the ATF to a crime scene in a small town like this?
So, first of all, Anna, this is going to be worked initially as a murder case, and that would obviously be the local or state purview for that. Because this is such a small area, 30 miles east or so of San Antonio, there's other resources that can come in from pretty close, but because it's such a small area, probably a very small police department and municipality, the FBI would move in to bring some of its resources out of San Antonio.
Gotcha.
The two things that would give the FBI purview over this: terrorism, and if that's a suspected part of this, they would go ahead and start working concurrently with the locals until it's determined to be, yes, it is a terrorist case. Then they would take over the lead. And the second is a hate crime. And either one of those things, terrorism or a hate crime, have specific definitions. I'm sure all that's being worked out right now as they track down the motive.
We still don't know even the identity of this gunman. But, Cedric, what do you think investigators are likely doing right now?
Well, I think everything that they can do under the circumstances in which they have to work in. We have to remember that it's still a very active crime scene, and one I'm quite sure, too, is going to take some time for them to clear. But the most important thing for them to do is be able to identify the shooter. Who is he or she? Where they're from? What was their motives? Was it an act of terrorism, or was it more domestic related? We don't know. So here again, we're still somewhat early. But I think the important piece is, as every moment go by, more and more information is going to be ascertained. And this may begin to, hopefully this puzzle begin to come together in some type of way.
James, you mentioned that this is such a small town. What do you make of the fact that it happened in this church in this town versus San Antonio, which is just 30 miles away?
Don't know. And I mean, it would be pure speculation, Anna, for me to say, well, possibly the shooter might have known people. He might have been somebody that was known to the community, or, as you pointed out, somebody that was in San Antonio and wanted to go to a place where there was going to be less law enforcement resistance. So that would be pure speculation. I think one of the interesting things about this, I mean, in this tragedy, and it's sobering, this is a town of about 683 people. The numbers right now are at 20, and as we know, because we've done these, you and I and others, far too often talking about these things, that number is assuredly going to climb, because we know there were a number of other folks that were wounded, that were taken, airlifted out and taken to hospitals. 683, 20, 25 people. Think about that. That's 3 to 4% of that town's population.
And one of the witnesses has told CNN that she knows at least 3 people who are injured are in critical condition. Again, we are working to find out more information about those victims, but we can confirm at University Hospital alone, at least 8 victims were taken there. Cedric, this church videotaped its services, we know, and would post them on YouTube afterwards. This happened in that 11 a.m. service right in the middle. I think we actually have one of the videos, not from this incident, but it is very possible this shooting was captured on tape. What could investigators learn from that?
Well, I mean, certainly, hopefully there is some video. I think it's be something to be gleaned from that information. Whether the subject was already sitting in the church service or whether he just came to the front door randomly shooting people, I think there's a lot to be gleaned from that video. But here's what's very touching in terms of what my colleague has just stated. That is a very small community. 2 or 3% of that population has been affected by that community. But imagine the first responders who are arriving to that scene among the death and the mayhem, who may be related to, or they themselves may be friends of some of those victims. That is a traumatic event that has taken place in that very small community. And I think for us as a nation, we continue to pray for them all, because in a community that size, people are very in close contact with each other. They know each other. First responders, this has had to be a very challenging and difficult scene for them as well.
I want to remind our viewers we are standing by for a press conference and news conference with investigators where we will learn more information, get an update on their investigation and what may have taken place today. But what we can confirm, according to the sheriff there in the county, is that at least 20 people are dead, and we know dozens more are injured, including perhaps families, children. James, knowing these kinds of numbers of victims, what does that tell you about the weapon or weapons that were used? I've
been listening to a number of conflicting reports, and not being on scene and certainly not being privy to the crime scene right now and what's being determined and gleaned from actually harvesting the forensic evidence there, because all the ballistics are going to be studied, all the shell casings are going to be policed up. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, in concert with the FBI and with the locals, are assuredly doing that. I heard some people say that it sounded like semi-automatic weapons, a magazine being emptied. We know this is Texas. Texas has very forgiving gun purchase rights. I mean, people out there own weapons, and they're proud to do so. Semi-automatic weapons have not been able to establish yet whether it was determined to be an automatic weapon. I think we should be very careful. We learned obviously late, after 2 days or so, a day or so, that it was the bump stock in Las Vegas. Whether or not this was just a lot of rounds in succession, which people on scene could have confused for automatic weapon fire, or simply somebody with a semi-automatic rifle.
And we don't know if there were more than one weapon as well.
We don't. What makes this so tragic and so difficult to conceive of is the fact that inside a church, we don't know how many exits there are, but inside that church, you know, it was similar to what happened in Vegas, where people were in those corrals watching the country concert, and a similar thing in here where you have 4 walls and somebody that comes into that church armed with weaponry that they're able to, you know, take lots of lives in a very short order, and people aren't able to egress. They can't get out and get away from the fire quickly enough.
Oh, we know the attacker apparently did leave the church because there was some kind of a chase, Cedric. Again, hoping to learn more details about that chase. We don't know how it ended exactly, but what do you make of the fact the suspect took off? He didn't take his own life inside the church.
Well, you know, it's a lot to be, I guess we could speculate in regard to that, but clearly he was trying to get away before he was encountered by local law officials there. And hopefully we'll learn more as to how his life ended, whether it was from police gunfire, whether he took his own life. Here again, we're still kind of early in this, Frederica, and I don't want to go out too far on a limb on this, but here's what I would say about the type of firepower that we used inside that church. As my colleague was just speaking, he's absolutely right. Cannot get too far ahead of this. But at the end of the day, for people who are listening to this report, who are seeing this as we're speaking, regardless of whether it was semi-automatic fire, automatic gunfire, something very horribly happened there that took the lives of a large number of people in a very small space. And that event of itself is very concerning. But as we learn more, and hopefully there will be some footage of what occurred inside that church, and it will probably not, I would imagine, be seen anytime soon, because they're going to become very much a part of the evidence of this whole investigation. But that has to be a very graphic and horrible scene. And here again, for those who are responding to that scene and having to be there in a community that small where people know each other is just very, very heartfelt. I can't find any other words to describe it.
No doubt about it. Here we are looking at some aerial video of the scene that was taken earlier from one of our affiliates, KABB, on scene there. You get a sense of just how rural this part of Texas is where this crime was committed. And James, we understand a makeshift gathering place has been set up for families to wait for answers, to wait for news of their loved ones. I imagine you've been on the other side of having to deliver this kind of horrible information to people and family members. Help us understand what these families might be going through right now.
Well, we refer to this in the federal government from the FBI's perspective as victim assistance. And I tell you, I worked cases where there were mass casualties. I worked cases where there were just horrific circumstances and death and destruction. I cannot even begin to tell you how difficult it's got to be when you're on the front line dealing with a family that, first and foremost, doesn't have an answer. And then secondly, if the answer is tragically they lost somebody in the carnage, that is a very difficult thing for folks to do. And the people that do that are as brave as anybody that runs into a fire or anybody that runs to the sound of the guns, because dealing with family members at this time, it's just, you have to have the right temperament for that. You have the right courage. It is just it's tragic, and I can't imagine. I assume that what's going to happen here pretty quickly is the FBI will set up a tip line. No one has come out yet and said whether or not this is a lone wolf or not, and I always think that that's premature, as to Cedric's point, for us to speculate on things like that until we've allowed the locals and the FBI that are on scene to come out and say something about that. But we're going to be looking for some answers, and unfortunately in this situation, the gunman either took his own life or was interdicted by the police, and we're not going to be able to ask those questions of him or her.
All right, James Galliano, Cedric Alexander, thank you both, and stand by, please. We have some new information just into CNN. The wife of Pastor Frank Pomeroy tells CNN their 14-year-old daughter was one of those killed in today's church shooting. Sherry Pomeroy says neither she nor her husband were at the church today when this shooting occurred, but confirming to CNN that the pastor's own daughter, 14 years old, is one of the victims. Again, at least 20 people who have lost their lives right now. An investigation continues. I want to bring in Representative Vicente Gonzalez. He is joining us on the phone from McAllen, Texas. And Congressman, you represent this county, Wilson County. What are you learning about what happened today?
I do. Well, first of all, our thoughts and prayers are with the people of Wilson County. It's certainly a tragedy that no one could ever have imagined that would occur in a community such as this. It's known for being a very peaceful place. Good country folks live there, and I'm shocked, and we're all shocked, and we're waiting to see what develops. It's been reported to me that we've lost 25 members of the community, and there are 20 others who are injured. Those numbers could obviously change throughout the day and maybe in the next few days. So I intend to keep a close eye and try to assist the community as much as we can.
And are you learning any more about how investigators are now piecing information together? Do you know anything about the attacker?
We don't. It was reported to me that he's actually not from this community. Apparently, his name was released as Sam Hyde. That was the name I was given. We don't know any more details. I assume probably there'll be search warrants executed probably later in the day. I assume we'll be trying to get to the bottom of this person's life and what could have motivated him to commit such a tragedy in a community like Wilson.
Do you know for sure that there is only one attacker?
I don't know for sure. It would be all speculation, but that's what's been reported to me, that there was only one attacker.
And do you know how that person ended up dying? We understand that he is dead, that there was some kind of chase, but it was unclear to us up till now, at least, if he took his own life or if there was some kind of altercation with police.
It was reported to me that his life was taken by law enforcement. Now, this just developed. I'm getting reports from my staff, and that's what I have as of now. I'm following it closely. Sometimes we get reports that turn out to be different down the road. So So I want to be very cautious, as I mentioned that to you.
And I think that is really important to note. Again, we are waiting for the official word from the investigators, from the sheriff, who has been in touch with CNN as well, who has confirmed at least 20 people are dead as they continue their investigation. FBI resources are on scene. ATF is on scene as well. A lot of people in this community are just trying to wrap their heads around what happened. Have you been in touch with residents there?
We have. We've been in touch with a few constituents who live there, and we've been in touch with the sheriff's department. I mean, it's certainly what occurred today. It's certainly not the character of this community. Wilson County is a rural community. It's a lot of really good people. Most of them are in farming and ranching and work out in the oil and gas fields. It's known as a very safe place. This is certainly way out of character and I think shocking to everyone there and everyone in the communities around Wilson County.
Sure. Are you able to share anything about any of the victims?
Well, probably what's been reported to me is a lot of the same that has been reported to you at this time. We're still gathering information. We've been in touch with the FBI and local authorities, and I think as this evening develops, we'll probably have a little bit more to share with the public.
I know that you were working to gather information, to confirm information. When you say what's been reported to you, when we were talking about the shooter, for example, earlier, who's telling you that information? Are those officials on the scene?
Yes, these are officials that my staff is communicating with, and that's the information that I've been able to convey, but it's still very limited at this time. I was told that they released the name of Sam Hyde, who caused this event, and I've been told that he's not from the local community, and it's a community of less than 700 inhabitants. Everybody knows each other. Many are related to each other. It's certainly not something that anyone would ever have expected.
Okay, Representative Vicente Gonzalez, Congressman from Texas and from Wilson County specifically, thank you so much for spending some of your evening with us. I'm so sorry for what you and your constituents and the people of Texas are having to grapple with right now. Again, thanks for your time. We are expecting to hear from President Trump tonight as well on this Texas mass shooting. The president keeping close tabs on the situation in Texas from thousands of miles away in Japan right now. Trump is on the first leg of this historic trip to Asia, where he is expected to focus on trade and the North Korea threat. The president earlier announcing he will meet with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin this week to discuss North Korea's rogue regime and its growing nuclear weapons program. Let's go to Tokyo now. Our Jeremy Diamond is live there. He's White House correspondent. Jeremy, what are you hearing from President Trump's reaction to this tragedy in Texas?
Well, so far what we've heard from the president came in the form of a tweet this morning shortly after these reports emerged. Let me read that to you right now. The president tweeting, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas. The FBI and law enforcement are on the scene. I am monitoring the situation from Japan." So the president continuing to be updated on this situation. This is, of course, just the latest tragedy that this president has had to respond to. 35 days ago, we saw the mass shooting in Las Vegas, and then last week, of course, we saw the terrorist attack in New York City. So this has been, the last 35 days have truly been pockmarked by tragedy. And the question now is how the president will further respond to this tragedy. We saw after Las Vegas, the president offered thoughts and prayers, but did not in the coming days after that go beyond that to try and figure out any legislation perhaps to address mass shootings in the U.S. Whereas last week, after this terrorist attack in New York City, we saw the president very quickly jumping to policy towards the ways that the country could address threat from terrorists, of course. So these are questions that will be posed to the president today. He has a busy schedule where he continues to meet with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe of Japan. And again, these questions will be posed as this debate once again turns to this question of mass shootings in the United States and what the country, what the president can do to stop them in the future. Anna?
It is such a sad, sad day here and there. Jeremy, will the president's plans for the rest of the day change as a result of the mass shooting in Texas?
As of yet, there is no update to the president's schedule, but we are expected to hear from him in just a couple of hours. He was expected to go to the embassy, to the U.S. Embassy here in Tokyo to address U.S. and Japanese business leaders. I would expect that the president would likely address this mass shooting for the first time on camera at that event, unless there are other changes, of course, to the president's schedule before then. But a busy day ahead, and now this trip, where he is just in the very beginning of it, is going to be against this backdrop, this terrible, terrible backdrop of another mass shooting in the United States.
Jeremy Diamond in Tokyo, traveling with the president. Thank you. Again, the president tweeting, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas. The FBI and law enforcement are on the scene. I am monitoring the situation from Japan." Meantime, we are awaiting a news conference from officials in Texas on this shooting. We'll bring you that live here on CNN when it happens, and we'll continue to update you on the very latest information we're getting on this mass murder, a shooting inside a small Texas church. When we come back, stay with us.